get started here. You feeling good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a unique situation when I went over to Thailand, so it'll be interesting.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear about it. All right. So we get started here. We are recording the interview of William Glen Lloyd. This interview is being conducted by David Morse from Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. It is 11:20 a.m. on September 7th, 2017. All right, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
Let's start off with just tell me when and where you were born.
I was born July 28th, 1950 in Stanton, Virginia.
Okay. Who are your parents?
I'm sorry?
Your parents?
My parents, I was raised by guardians, George and Beatrice Walker.
Okay. All right. What were their occupations?
My dad, general laborer, he worked construction and drove a truck on occasion.
Okay. Very cool. What about siblings? Do you have any siblings?
I had a brother who was also, my parents were guardians of him, no blood. And I found out later in life, I found my biological parents and found that I had a brother and a sister.
Oh, very cool.
Through them, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I didn't find that out until I was 30 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, siblings, the ones that you either grew up with or that you later on connected with, did any of them serve in the military?
Yes, both of them did. The one that I was raised with, he did 20 years in the Air Force, no Vietnam service. My biological brother, he did a year in Vietnam. I believe he was there in 1967 with the 25th.
Wow, man. That's pretty incredible. So, before you were in the military, what were you doing?
High school, I was bouncing around from school to school, and my family moved a lot. And my junior year, I was missing a lot of school, and I ended up dropping out. And that was in 1967, May of 67.
Okay. What grade were you in at that time?
I was a junior. I was in 11th grade.
11th grade.
And I was working, trying to work two jobs. My father was terminally ill with cancer. He wasn't able to work. He was dying. And so I was trying to do the best I could. My mom was taking in ironings and laundries and to earn some money. And with me working, like I said, I was missing school, and I ended up quitting and just working full time.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you come about that decision? I mean, what was it that made you decide to take the role of?
Well, I was the only one at home, and I saw they were kind of in dire straits, and they ended up moving in with a childhood friend of theirs who needed help. The lady had a stroke, and she needed somebody to help take care of her, and so it was working out for both of them to, ease in my parents' financial and help. In turn, was helping this lady, day to day. But my decision to quit school, it was just, it was a new school. My 11th grade, new people, and I just felt like I didn't really fit in.
Yeah.
And again, my grades were starting to really take a nosedive. And so I opted. I said, best thing for me to do is quit and go to work. And I know I was facing the draft.
Yeah. And what year did you say this was again?
That was 1967.
Around 1967.
May of 1967.
Okay. So you're taking care of your family and helping out, I guess with two families technically.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you enlisted, or did you enlist, or were you drafted?
I enlisted. I'd gotten my draft notice.
Okay.
I was going to get drafted, and I went to the Marine recruiter and because my dad was a Marine. I was going to go in the Marines, and as I was leaving, the Marine recruiter, I visited him about 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
He had the paperwork already. All I needed was my signature. And the last time I went to him, I said, I need a day to think about this. And as I was walking out the door, the Air Force recruiter stopped me. And he said, "Did you join the Marine Corps?" And I said, "No, sir." I said, "Not yet." I said, "I'm close." And he asked me if I considered the Air Force. And I said, "You don't want me." Because at the time, the Air Force, you had to have a high school diploma. And he said, "Why wouldn't I want you?" And I told him, I said, "I just dropped out of high school." And he asked me, was I a dummy or a troublemaker? And I said, "No, neither one." I explained my situation. And he asked me if I'd be willing to take a test. And I said, "Sure." And I took the test that day. And he called me a couple days later and said, "If you want to come in the Air Force, we'll take you." And I said, "That sounds better than the Marines." One of the hardest things to do is go back to that Marine recruiter and tell him I changed my mind, I'm going to the Air Force. But he was okay with it. He said, "Well, we're all on the same team." He said, "But we are the Marine Corps." I said, "I understand." So, and that's how I got in the Air Force.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What did your family think when you joined?
It was a shock to them
Yeah.
because they didn't know I was going to do it. And it was a really unique kind of traumatized them a little bit because I found out in later years that they weren't my legal guardians. They had actually just had taken me from my biological mother. They had an agreement where they were watching me, babysitting for me. My biological mother had told them that I could stay with them until she was on her feet, and hence we kept moving. And the people who raised me, basically, I guess they kidnapped me. But they were mom and dad to me. I didn't know anything else. And so when I enlisted, I needed parents' signature. And that just created a whole thing here. So they had to get some papers from the No Republic saying that they were my legal guardians, and they had no signatures or anything from biological parents. And I wasn't told a lot as when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I didn't find out anything till after both, my parents that raised me passed away. I was able to get information. But anyway, they were able to, they got some papers together and signed for me to go in. And once I did it, they were okay with it. They knew I was, moving on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And they were happy that it was the Air Force.
Good. So what year was this that you ended up joining the Air Force?
I'm sorry.
What year was it that you ended up joining?
I joined. I went up. I enlisted in July of '68, and I went in September. I took the oath in September.
September '68.
September '68.
And so from there, took the oath September '68. Did you immediately ship out from that point?
I left September 22nd. A group of us, we went down to Lackland, in Texas,
Okay.
for basic training.
Yeah, good old Lackland.
Yeah, it's still the same. And boot camp was 8 weeks
Okay.
at the time. Yeah. And there was boot camp. I mean,
So, but boot camp in '68. I'm imagining. I don't know. What did you feel that there was a little bit more of a focus due to the current conflict, or do you feel it was basically the same as any other time?
I would say any other time. I mean, it was the whole getting us all to blend as one and work together as a unit.
Yeah.
I've listened to guys that have gone through basic training recently, and what has changed is I think the chewing outs have toned down. But the overall aspects of boot camp, I thought, was just what I expected.
Yeah.
A lot of yelling and a lot of confusion. Hurry up and wait. But the big thing I noticed about boot camp is the blacks and white. You got to remember that I went in at the height of the civil rights movement, and there was a lot of tensions going on, and I didn't see that at all in basic training. I mean, none. I mean, we were all in the same boat.
You're all integrated together.
That's it. And I saw later on throughout the service, I saw where groups paired off, and not in basic. It was like we were all together.
Wow, that's good.
And that was a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Any instructors stand out to you in boot camp?
Any instructors?
Yeah.
My TI, I still carry a picture of him.
Really?
He's in my. I don't have my phone with me, but yeah, I've got him in my copy of the picture, and I put it in my cell phone, and I show him to people now and then. His name was William Martin. He was a black guy from New York. He left quite an impression on me. I mean, he was very typical drill instructor, but just left an impression on me.
Oh, sure.
It was a good impression. I mean, I was scared to death of him, but he was.
Oh my goodness. You just reminded me. I did not turn down my phone. Okay, it's turned down now.
Yeah.
Gotta make sure. Wow. So this instructor influenced you, and how would you say influenced you?
Just the fact that he made you feel like, I mean, he broke you down to a basic level and just built you up and kind of let you know that you can do this, you can do that. Mm-hmm. Kind of like more than a fatherly figure. He was guidance. I mean, he was there. If you screwed up, of course, he was in your face. But towards the end, our last week, he would tell us how we had progressed, and just left a good impression. I mean, we're out there, in the 90-degree temperature where he's doing the same drills we're doing, and we'd be sweating, and he'd be bone dry, not a ring under his arm of perspiration. I'm like, this guy's not human? How's he? I mean, he's demonstrating the push-ups and stuff, and we're like, this guy's not real.
And, so 8 weeks of basic training, and then did you go to a tech school?
Went off tech school. I was picked for an administrative specialist, and I was happy with that. I had put in for air traffic control, and I missed the test by 5 points. I think they told me, and so they put me in administration, and I was okay with that. I liked that. It was a little. My first assignment, I was assigned to an Army post right out of tech school. And I'm thinking I signed up for the Air Force. I got orders for Fort Knox, Kentucky. I'm like, what's at Fort Knox, Kentucky? And I was assigned to a weather detachment. But it was kind of neat. There was only about 18 personnel there, Air Force. And they treated us like we were some kind of royalty on that post. But a funny story to that, when I first reported, I knocked on the door and gave it the one rap, and there was no answer. And I didn't know whether to knock again, because you were in the Air Force, and I thought, what do I do? And I finally heard somebody say, come in. And there was a captain sitting at a desk who would end up being my supervisor. He's got his feet on the desk with his arms behind his head like this, and a tech sergeant sitting across from me, smoking a cigarette, shirt's unbuttoned. And I came in, of course, I'm doing the airman lawyer reporting as ordered. He goes, we don't do that around here. He said, look, he said, if nobody's around, you can call me Jim, call me Smitty. His name was James Smith. He said, if there's Army personnel around, you call me Captain. I'm going, yes, sir. He goes, we kind of relax. And I was there 2.5 years, and it took me a good 6 months to kind of get down to where they were at, because I was still, you're fresh out of boot camp and tech school, and everything was spit shine and polish, and now here it's almost like a MASH unit. Everybody was so, I couldn't believe it. I said, hey, it's a good assignment. But that was a good assignment. I enjoyed that.
Wow.
That was good.
That's funny. So, I mean, despite the big transition there, what were some noticeable differences being on an Army post compared to a Air Force base?
Living conditions. We were in a Army barracks, but the wing that we were in had been converted to Air Force standards, 2 men to a room. And just down our hallway, we had a real small day room, TV and a pool table in there. And just down the end of the hall was an open bay with the Army troops in there. And they would pass down our hallway to leave the building, and they were like, "What's this, you guys? What do you guys got here?" You know. And this is the way the Air Force, our living conditions are enlisted. Hey, they couldn't get over that. So I mean, just seeing how they were living, even their mess hall was a lot different than Air Force chow hall. Fort Knox was an armor post, and it was also a basic training post. So we saw a lot of trainees coming through. But we were we were in our own little world in the Air Force. And, some of the senior, there was 3 officers, and senior NCOs. I think there might have been about 4. Of course, they lived in base housing, but the rest of us, we were in those dorm. We called it a dorm. And then I had gotten married, and then I was living off post in an apartment. But it was, I'll tell you, after adjusting, it was a real good assignment. I mean, real good assignment.
It's good.
I enjoyed those 2.5 years.
Yeah. So 2.5 years there at Fort Knox. What happens next?
I had gotten orders for Osan Air Base, Korea. And my wife was pregnant. And the Air Force at that time, if your wife was pregnant, depending on your career field, if you weren't in a critical career field, they wouldn't move you until after the baby was born. So she had the baby in October, and I guess it was, I think it was around February of '71. I had gotten orders for Utapao, Thailand. And that's where the change took place. I left. I went home on leave, and I left for Travis Air Force Base. That's where my port of call was. And I get to Travis, and they don't have any orders for me. And although I had orders in my hand, they didn't have a port of call for me. So they said I was going to have to spend a couple days at Travis until they got a flight for me to go over. No quarters on base. They put me up in a motel in Fairfield, California. And finally, a couple days later, they had a flight to Utapao. And I get to Utapao, I reported to personnel. They don't have anything on me. Like they weren't expecting me. And, no job, no slots for me. They told me to go to this barracks, and I could stay there and come back to personnel the next morning. Well, the next morning turned out to be approximately 3 weeks. I kept going. It even got to the point where they were telling me, come back in 3 days. And that was rough because I was homesick, big time. I don't have a job to do. I don't know my way around the base at all. So I was spending just a lot of time just in the barracks and then the immediate area. Finally, they said, wanted me to go to, they had just built a bowling alley on the base. They told me to go to the bowling alley upstairs and see a Major Menahan. So I did that. When I got there, he knew nothing of me coming in. He was in charge of special services. That's all the recreational stuff. He said, I don't really have a job for you. I don't know why they sent you here. So he said, the only thing I can ask you to do is help for whatever reasons, R&R requests were going through special services. So he showed me what to do as far as processing orders and requests for R&R. So he gave me a little space, and that's what I was doing. I did that for a month and a half. And then that ended. because he said we have a Thai national that's going to take over that job. So here I am without a job again. He said, I'm going to send you down to the beach. They had a beach recreation area. He said, the Thais run it. He said, but I need somebody to watch over the Thais to make sure they're doing their job. So now I'm down. I've got a sign down there when entering the beach says, Sergeant William G. Loy, NCOIC Beach. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I mean, gravy. I mean, who wouldn't want that assignment? But again, I was like, I'm not doing my job. I want to do my job. Then I got augmented into the security police. And I guess because I was expendable with no really position, I pulled 9 weeks of augmentee duty out on the perimeter. And, not 9 weeks together, but it was sporadic. And I, believe it or not, I kind of enjoyed that because I felt like I have a mission. I've got something,
Like a purpose.
responsibility, something to do. And I went through a week's crash course of the M16 again, and some OJT, with a guy. And I started following in with them guys, and they kind of took a liking to me, and they kind of adopted me. And I was doing that, and I was enjoying it until January of '72. We had a sapper attack, and I was in a tower when it happened.
What kind of attack is this?
Sapper attack. That's guys come in with, the enemy comes in with charges on them.
Oh.
And their mission that night, to my understanding, was to do damage to B-52s. And there's a difference of opinions on what actually happened that night. I have in my mind, and what I heard on the radio, one thing which I believe to be true. And then I read an official report that was released not too long ago that I found on the internet. And that thing's, it's off. It's off. A lot of stuff was deleted on it, whited out.
Right.
And I know I had heard the next morning after the attack that 5 enemy were killed. The official report says 1 was killed. And then I saw somebody had posted on the internet, and I don't know where they got the information, but there was a map of where the infiltrators came in and the route that they had taken, and that is totally opposite of what I know happened. I know they came in just down from my position, and this map has them coming in all the way to the other end of the base. And it would have taken them a good 1.5 miles to get to where the damage was done. So I don't know who came up with that map, but I'm pretty certain that map's absolutely false.
Well, let's start with your story, your accounts
Okay.
of what happened. This was in '72, January of '72. You said
January 10th, and I always say it was at night, but it was because it was in the morning. I'm going to guesstimate that it was between 1 and 3 in the morning. I don't know the exact time. It was quiet that night. And then there was an explosion to my rear and to my right. And I didn't see a flash or anything, but I heard the explosion. And then I heard a lot of chatter on the radio, and then I heard some small arms fire. And across the street, I was on, right on the perimeter, there was a street out in front of me, and then a village over here. And I saw, looked like muzzle flash coming from that village. And my instincts were to fire. And I fired 2 or 3 rounds in that direction.
Oh, I'm sorry. What side of the perimeter were you on?
I was on it would have been I would have been on the north side of the base.
Okay.
And the explosion, the best of my knowledge, was to my right and the rear.
Okay.
and the muzzle flashes that I was seeing were coming from front left. And I didn't know I didn't know, honestly, what was happening. I heard on the radio, I can't remember exactly what I heard, but it was like being attacked. And just panic just set over me. I mean, big time. I just, not knowing what to do, but not knowing what to do.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
But my instincts when I saw flashes over there and hearing that we were attacked and hearing the explosion, my instinct was just to fire. I fired. I don't know if it was 2 or 3. That stopped. Later on, I got really ripped good for firing over there. I said I shouldn't have fired over there because it was a friendly's village. And I told them what I saw and what I heard and what I saw. I just told them I was scared. And I had a staff sergeant that in security police, he took care of the situation where I didn't get in trouble. But didn't really know the facts of what happened until daylight. And I had heard exactly what had happened. And supposedly, what I was told, 3 sappers had gone over to the B-52 revetment. One of them threw a charge into an engine cowling, did some damage. I think there was 2 B-52s that were damaged with explosives. And when those guys were leaving, a K-9 troop fired at one of them and killed a guy. And according to the official records, that was the only guy that was killed. Now, I don't know what happened to the other 2 guys. Now, that morning when I was told, 3 were killed there, and 1 was bitten by a snake and died. Now, the official report not the official report, that one with the map said that somebody was bitten with a snake and died. So there's like bits and pieces of each of those reports make sense from what I heard and was told. But on a whole, it just wasn't jiving.
Interesting. Now, can you explain to me who the sappers were? Were they locals?
What I had heard, they were determined to be North Vietnamese sympathizers.
Okay.
Viet Cong. And at the time, I didn't even know we had Viet Cong.
Right.
There.
Yeah,
I mean, we're in Thailand.
Yeah,
We're
you're in Thailand.
stone's throw from Cambodia. But I didn't know that. But yeah, there's Viet Cong sympathizers were there.
Wow. Did anybody get injured that day?
Americans, no. Just the enemy. And again, according to official reports, 1 dead. But I'd heard 5. And if there was 3 guys that went in there that were seen, it was like, what happened to the other 2? You know, they weren't captured.
Right.
And, but that was a traumatizing night.
Yeah.
And,
I bet.
and then for a while, you know, after getting chewed out and getting hell for firing my weapon, I was wondering, geez, did I hit somebody that shouldn't have been hit?
Mm-hmm.
Never found out. So I don't think so. Nothing ever came of those flashes. I did see somewhere in one of them reports where he said the gunfire was detected on the radio from a village across the street. And that had to be the gunfire that I saw. But that's all it said. It said someone detected gunfire. Crazy.
Wow.
But that was the only incident as far as being actually attacked.
Wow.
The one night, thank God.
Wow. So how long were you at? No, it's Utapao.
Utapao.
Yeah. How long were you at Utapao?
I was there 11 months.
11 months. And you only dealt with the one attack.
The one attack, I did see there was a lieutenant colonel that had gotten killed off base rather,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw his body when they brought it in.
Oh.
That was and that was on found out that he was seeing some lady, and the husband caught him, shot him, and the husband was a Thai officer, and some Thai taxi driver took the fall for it, and he was executed. And they had a firing squad and everything, and I saw pictures of that. We were invited to go to it, to see the execution. I'm like, who want to go see that? I did see pictures, but the colonel's body, when they brought it back, I was getting off duty that night, augmenting, and I stopped at a place called Kamoy Stop, which means theft stop. And it was run by the theft stop. It was run by the security police, and the town patrol had come in and was telling us about with the incident. And they said, yeah, "You guys want to see the body?" And I didn't want to see it, but the two guys I were with, hey, yeah. And I went with them, and in my mind, it seemed like the body was there, but it couldn't have been. It had to be at the morgue or the hospital. And I remember going in, and I can still picture the room was this color, and the body was laying on a table. And I remember I went over and looked at it and saw holes, and it looked like, and all I could think of was, man, it's like you could stick a pencil in there. I couldn't believe that would kill a guy. Yeah. And I had that haunted me. That still bothers me. Every now and then I see a flash of that. And I could go months and not see it, and then something will trigger it where I'll see that body. But through help with the VA, I've got it pretty much controlled where when I do have those moments, I can get out of it pretty quick. Where before, I would dwell on it. But,
sure.
I'm handling it pretty good now.
Good. Spent 11 months there, and so what do you do? I guess you're still married while you're there.
Yeah.
How do you stay in touch with family members?
Writing letters. Writing letters, because
okay.
we didn't have the internet back then.
No.
So just wrote letters, and then I got kind of lax with that. I didn't write home for, seemed like a few weeks, but it must have been like maybe over a month. Mm-hmm. And I got called on the carpet and asked if I written when's the last time I wrote my mother. I thought, so I forget the guy, what rank he was, but he made me sit there and write a letter to my mother in front of him, and told me to make sure I write home. But after you're there a while, and you're writing, and then I don't want to tell them none of the bad stuff, so you never mention any of that stuff. Just day to day. The weather's nice, blah blah blah, and you just get lax. Just quit writing. And then there was times I didn't know if I was going to get home. I just felt like this is where I'm going to be. I'm not going to get back home. I had that in my head that I wasn't going to make it back home. But I did.
That's good.
And the only reason I was there 11 months, the Air Force was running a program where if you were soon to be discharged, they would send you to a school in Kansas to learn a civilian trade if we opted to do that. And that's why I came home after 11 months. I opted for that.
Okay, that's civilian trade?
Yeah.
Okay.
That didn't work out too good.
Oh, really?
It was like our, you're in the Air Force, you know how you have your dream sheet where you want to go, and of course you never get where you want to go. And they had the same thing with these schools. They had all these different jobs. They had truck driver, they had telephone pole repair, sales, all kinds of different things. And I had taken the telephone wire repair because I thought, that's a good job because when I get out, I could go to work for the local energy company we have, because them guys were making good money and they had a great pension. I didn't get it. They put me in sales. It's something I was never going to use. But the hard part about that was I was the only person in my group. There was about, I don't know, 10 of us, I guess. I was the only one that had come from a combat area. The rest of these guys came from Europe or Japan, and cushy assignments. And that was kind of hard because I had nothing in common with these guys. And no time to vent.
Right. How was it coming home? I mean,
It was weird. I came home, there was a lot of protesters. I didn't really, I didn't run into any, like, getting spit on or anything, but, I'd heard about it. I was told when we landed at Travis, they gave us a nice dinner, and they told us that they suggested that we fly out of there in civilian clothes. And they said, don't wear your uniform. It was odd. We get to wear it if we wanted. I was proud, and I enjoyed wearing the uniform when traveling. And I wore mine, and the only thing I ran into, I flew from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and I ran into some of them Hare Krishna people. But they didn't bother me. They came up and they were talking about peace and all that. I said, I'm all for peace. But I didn't have a problem, thank God. And then of course, when I come home, I got discharged. When I came home from Kansas, I was discharged.
yeah.
That's where the trouble began. I just didn't fit in. I don't know. The only thing they told us when we got discharged was to take our 214, have it registered at the courthouse, and to go to unemployment office. They never mentioned go to the VA or anything. And I went to the unemployment office, and I was being interviewed, and the guy gave me a card, and he wrote veteran on top of it and told me to go to another station. And when I went to the station, I gave the card to this lady, and she looked at it, and she goes, who wrote this on there? You? Talking about the veteran. And I said, no. And I said, gentleman over there, you're not getting any special treatment here. I said, I'm looking for a job. I said, I'm not looking for money. I want a job. And she was nasty. And that was my first thing with returning to civilian life. I said, oh man, this ain't working. And I wanted to go back into service at that point. But my wife didn't want it. She wanted to be home near her family. So that's why I ended up getting out. But I kicked around at some jobs for about 6 months. Worked here or worked there a little bit. In each place I just tried different. I tried the sales thing. That lasted a week. I said, I'm not cut out for this. I'm just not cut out. I'm not a grab a person. No, you got to look at this. And no pressure for me.
Yeah.
And I went to a plastics factory, and I was working with guys that, when I say no high school education, I'm in the same boat. But although I did get my GED and I'd taken some college courses, but the people I'm working with now, I don't know how they got past stacking blocks. And I thought, I'm a guy, you give me a job, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the best I can. And then if I got time to goof off, I'll goof off. But get the job done. And this wasn't the place. It wasn't working. And then finally I landed a good job that I stayed at for 42 years. And I had personal difficulties on it with people. But I was fortunate where I had supervisors, a couple supervisors that were Vietnam veterans that covered for me. I hit a couple people in the locker room. Went after a supervisor who threatened to fire me the next day. And my supervisor told him, you're going to need a witness. He said, you seen him? I hadn't seen nothing. So, this was all before I knew about PTSD.
Sure.
Pre-PTSD days. But I was able to hang on to the job, so.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
So you settled down, you settled down in, what was it, Kansas?
No, I came home from Kansas. I got discharged out in Kansas. I came back to Pennsylvania. To the town my wife lived in. And we lived there, and I ended up that was in 72, and then we got divorced in 83. And I known that was going to happen, I would have definitely stayed in the service. I missed the service. I always wished I would have stayed in.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good deal. It's such a helpless feeling. I remember when I got discharged and I drove outside the base, and I didn't have that ID card, and I thought, all I got is the money in my pocket, and when that's gone, what do I do? Where do I go to eat? Where do I go if I get sick? And you don't think about it when you're in. It's when you're free.
Right. So now you seem to be pretty well set. What are you doing currently?
I'm retired. I retired 4 years ago. I got hurt on the job, and I was Social Security wanted to give me, well, they did give me 100% disability, and I still had that work ethic. And I asked them, I didn't understand how all Social Security worked. I said, what happens when I want to go back to work? And they said, well, why would you want to go back to work if we're giving you 100% disability? Well, I said, well, I don't know. And they explained to me. They said, no. They said, you got 100%, and then when you reach 65, you'll get your same amount. They'll just change the title to retirement. So that's what I did. The insurance company that was handling my case at work, they gave me a buyout just to get me off their records, and I had to get a lawyer because I didn't know what to do, and so he helped me a great deal, and then I had a pension, which wasn't a lot, but they penalized me for retiring early. But nothing from nothing's nothing. It was a bad pension, so. But I'm okay. The VA, if it wasn't for the VA, I'd be dead. There's not a doubt in my mind I'd be dead. I got, in that 42-year period where I was working, I was dealing with PTSD but didn't know it. I had a very short fuse. And my reaction sometimes was to physically release the anger, and not a good thing. And I got tied up with a motorcycle club towards the end. That didn't last long because I didn't want to go to jail. I said, this isn't for me. But what I liked from the motorcycle club was the camaraderie.
Right.
And not knowing, without going to a vet center and the VA and not understanding PTSD, once I learned about it, I realized what my problems were, and I realized why this motorcycle club thing was working. It was that bond, and like I said, I got out of that, and now my support groups are the support groups.
Right.
I go to 3 support groups a week. Go Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Some days we go in and something's bothering you, talk about it. What's said there stays there. And we gain strength from each other. Some days we go in and everybody's cool. Nobody's having any issues. We meet, we go to lunch, and it's like a social gathering. But without that, I know I'd be dead. If it wasn't for those groups, I know I'd be dead. And again, I knew nothing about the VA. When I got divorced, I'm going to back up to 1983. When I got divorced, my parents were dead. I had nobody. I lost total contact with the brother I was raised with. My biological siblings were too far away. And I started drinking. I got into a fight one night. I hurt a guy pretty bad. I could have went to jail. And I went to the VA in Philadelphia. Told them what happened. I said, I need help. And they said, I told them I was going to kill myself. And they said, are you a combat veteran? And they said, are you a Vietnam veteran? I said, yes, combat veteran. I said no. Because my understanding of a combat vet at that time was a guy that's 24/7 out in the bush. Mm-hmm. To me, that was a combat vet. Mm-hmm. Did I see combat? Yes. Did I consider myself a combat veteran? No. I was running a beach a lot of the time. You know what I mean? So, but I was. And I told them no. They basically kicked me out the door. They said, we can't help you. Gave me a file number, which I still have the same file number to this day, but they said they could do nothing for me. And I left there, and I went back falling into the same thing. I was working. I don't know how, well, I know how I didn't get fired, because like I told you, I had veteran supervisors. I would do my job. I did my job, but I wouldn't take no shit off anybody, or if somebody wasn't doing theirs, I'd be in their face. But I managed to get through that. And then a lady named Marcia Four, she was a nurse in Vietnam. I had joined VVA, by the way, in 1985, 6. Well, Marcia Four presently is the national vice president of VVA.
Okay. Pronounce VVA is what?
Vietnam Veterans of America.
Right.
And I served as their president for 5 years in Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I got real active with them. They helped me a lot. But the moving wall was in a town near us, and we were assigned to provide security for it and other things. And one morning, I don't cry. I didn't cry with my mom. I just don't cry. And one night, wee hours in the morning, we were down at the wall. I lost it. I mean, I really lost it. I just broke down. And Marcia, I remember Marcia holding me, and she says, you have to get to the VA. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. And she goes, I know what's wrong with you. She goes, you've got to get to the VA. So she got me hooked up with the Coatesville, Pennsylvania VVA. And they had a pretty good mental health program there. And I went there, and that's when I first realized what was wrong.
Wow.
And I start to feel a little emotional talking about it, because, like I said, I don't shed a tear often.
Sure.
And but when I went out there and I saw other guys and going through the same shit, worse, some of them worse. I mean, and so that's when I started getting treatment there. And they had an outpatient program in Springfield, a town that was near us, and I went there. And a wonderful therapist by the name of Elaine Alvarez. Man, I'll tell you, they saved my life. They really saved my life. And I've stayed with them all these years. I mean, I switched places I went. I went down, when I moved about 50 miles from where I was living, and I started going to a VA hospital in Maryland. And real good mental health program, one of the best in the state. But as far as your primary care, not too good. And they'd want to transport you to Baltimore. They would take you down, but I wasn't liking that too much. So then I went to the Wilmington, Delaware VA, and it's a good place. They have everything right there. They even do surgery there. So it's a good facility.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and that's where I go now for my mental health. And concerned with that Agent Orange, as a lot of us are.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally acknowledged that Thailand was sprayed. And, they're starting to, acknowledge that fact.
Good. But
you have to jump through hoops. You have to get buddy letters and all kinds of stuff saying that you were here in a sprayed area. And I'm fortunate, I'm very fortunate, knock on wood, that I don't have any issues as far as skin, diabetes, a lot of these guys, neuropathy and so forth. I'm fortunate, and I hope I don't.
Right.
And I am being compensated for the PTSD,
Good.
and which is a big help because it covers all my medical. I don't have any medical expenses.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
That is good. That's very good. All right, so kind of wrapping things up here. You mentioned that you're part of Vietnam Veterans of America, VVA. Are you part of any other veteran organizations?
I belong to a VFW. I belong to the Legion, Disabled American Veterans, but I'm not really active with any of them anymore. I got burned out with VVA, to be honest with you. Being the president, it's like I had my hands into everything, and I totally got burnt out. And when somebody else told me I didn't want to do it anymore, I stepped back, and so I'm not really active. I'm a member of all those organizations, but I'm not. No positions, and I don't get involved when they're doing something. I just don't get involved anymore. Like I said, the two vet centers I go to, one in Wilmington and one in Maryland, and the VA hospital at Delaware. That's my support.
And you're here in Dayton, right, Pat, for a particular reason?
Right. It's a reunion of anyone that was stationed at Utapau all years. And my main reason for attending, this is the fourth one, this first one that I've attended. I was hoping to find somebody that was with the security police 71 to 72. I was looking for some answers. What did you hear and see that day? And, is my mind, maybe I'm wrong? I don't think so, but am I wrong, or is this what you heard, what's on this report? And but I haven't ran into anybody thus far.
Okay.
That was there. I've ran into some guys over there, 71 and 72, that knew of the attack, but they weren't like on the flight line or somewhere else. And I did try to contact this sergeant that covered for me, and we were pretty good friends. And I tried through Facebook and MySpace and all that, and I was able to find his daughter. And all she told me was that he died suddenly a few years ago. And I didn't question it. She didn't offer me much information. Again, I didn't question it. I sent her a couple pictures of her father, but I never got a note back like "thank you" or "I received them." And I didn't push that either. I didn't follow up. I'd love to know what happened to him. And sometimes I think, I enjoy the past somewhat more so than the future. And there's a lot of people who don't want anything to do with the past. They just don't want to talk about the past.
Right.
Even as far back as high school,
So, kind of talking about the future, this is being recorded. It's going to be archived. What message would you give to future generations that could possibly be viewing this?
I would say education is important. I say get as much education as they can, as much as they can afford. Try to do something in life that you're going to enjoy, because you only get one shot. And you can always question a lot about your past and what you should have done. Have goals, meet them. The military, I think, is a fantastic way for a career. I really do. Depending on what job you have. I mean, you got to like it. You can't go in the military and be doing something you don't like, because that's not going to work. But basically, just try to get along with as many people as you can and find peace in this world. It's crazy right now, especially now.
Yeah.
Worrying about. I've heard people talking about they're worried about the hurricane. I'm like, I'm more worried about North Korea than that hurricane. And just I think that's my message. And another thing is for anybody that's in the military to save as much information, orders, make copies, keep them, know where they're at, because some things you can't recoup when it's lost. And I've found that out when people, just from hearing people putting claims in with the VA for compensation, they have no proof that they did this or they did that. And without paperwork, you can't prove anything. Because I know I sent for my Air Force records, and I was expecting something like this. I got a few sheets, and my APRs were written up for a job that I didn't need. Well, my APRs while I was at Utapau were written up like I had did the R&R section my whole time there. I did it a month and a half. And the captain that signed my APR, I didn't even know who he was. And I remember names back then. And I said, I don't even know this guy who signed my APRs. And it's supposed to be signed by your supervisor or commanding officer. My commanding officer was Menahan. I don't know who this guy is. So same thing. It's just like when I first put in for my compensation that I was on the perimeter. They said nothing in your records shows you did security police duty. I had every order. I saved them, copied them, resubmitted it, and then they acknowledged. But without those orders, I would have been screwed.
Yeah.
So I think anybody that's the biggest advice I can give. If you're in the military, save everything. You know, put it somewhere safe, lock it up, forget about it. But just save it. Because you never know when you're going to need it. You never know when you're going to need it.
That's good.
I still got my shot records.
That's a lot there. I'm sure that's thick. All right. Well, we're coming. I mean, this is about it here. Do you think that there's anything that we have not covered so far that you would like to discuss about?
No. The only thing I can add, for people that are discharged, register with the VA, even if you don't have a problem. Get in the system. Just get into the VA system. And for God's sakes, if you are having problems that come under PTSD, tell them about it. Don't keep it bottled up. Don't act like there's nothing wrong. I did that. I wouldn't admit that I had something wrong, until I had to.
That's really good.
And they can help you. They definitely can help you, but you've got to ask for the help, because they're not going to pull you in.
Right.
They won't pull you in. But I guess that's about it.
All right, Glenn. Well, this concludes our interview. Thank you, sir, for your service.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your story.
Thank you so much, and thank you for yours.
All right. That was.